Yes.
Yeah. So Steve Mnuchin, who he actually's had kind of a big week, and I was going to throw some clips up there, but I just can't tolerate him talking. That kind of
I
mealy
know.
mouth thing. But first of all, he did pick a fight sort of with Greta Thunberg the other day. I believe it was yesterday, from Davos of all places, saying that she needed to take some economic courses before she, kept talking about this whole planet on fire stuff.
Why doesn't he say something like she needs to be given a whole bunch of money by her family before she should be allowed to talk about economics?
He doesn't have a dad who works at Goldman Sachs, but the thing that is relevant to the conversation we've been having is that yes, they are floating another round of tax cuts, and as we know, these tax cuts that they call the middle class tax cuts busted our budget. Our deficit is higher than it's ever been, and also Trump I mean, it's hard to tell because Trump is kind of addled, but in a recent interview, he did kind of say that they would be looking at, in his second term, cutting entitlements.
Entitlements. I love how they call them entitlements.
So looking at Social Security and Medicare. So
here, wait, I have the clip that you sent, and I hate to show it to people because I don't want to.
Well, maybe if they don't know what he's like, you might as well,
He's disgusting. Here we go.
What the president told Joe, just this idea of additional tax cuts coming. I was thinking this was something that you were gearing up and potentially thinking of if there's another 4 years, that would be something happening now. But the president has since said that this is going to be something that's probably coming to Congress in 90 days. Can you explain a little bit about what this plan is and how quickly you think you can move forward on it?
Sure. Well, let me first just put this in perspective, because there's no question that the president's economic agenda is working. The combination of tax cuts, regulatory relief, and now trade, getting the 2 big trade deals done last week. And the president has asked us to start working.
Also, since when did Rachel from Friends start hosting the news?
Working on what we call Tax 2.0, and that will be additional tax cuts that fuel the economy.
What will they look like?
Did you say kill the economy?
There'll be tax cuts for the middle class, and we'll be also looking at other incentives to stimulate economic growth.
Can you give us any hint as to what that is yet?
Or
still early?
I won't preview them here today, but again, they'll be focused on items that will increase economic growth.
Why looking at the middle class as tax cuts for there right now?
Again, I think the president feels that we need to continue to incentivize the middle class, that their taxes have been too high historically. We had big tax cuts already, and that's an area we'll continue to look at.
This is all happening as the deficit looks like it's crossing some new high levels. How do you kind of look at that? When do you expect that deficit will be tackled, and how are we going to do that?
Well, that's a good question.
I think he should be honest here and say, honestly, Rachel, nobody gives a fuck about the deficit unless the Democrats are in power, and we can use it as a bludgeon so that they don't get to help people have health care and live healthy, sane lives. We only care about the deficit when the Democrats are in power. We don't give a fuck about the deficit when we can run up credit card bills and credit bills so that we can run our wars and make ourselves rich. Let's see what he actually says.
Let me just step back for a second and comment on the first tax cuts, because I stand behind my comments that the tax cuts will.
So he didn't answer?
Will pay for themselves, despite the New York Times disagreeing with me today. We've tracked the numbers. We're right on track for the first 2 years. Again, what we've said is kind of with.
I gotta tell you, I have a hard time looking at this guy. I think you're right, Kelly. I have a hard time looking at Trump. I have a hard time looking at Pompeo. I think my third eye is picking
I have
up.
a picture of him we can look at, obviously. I'm finding it right now.
Oh my God, sick. Okay, let's do this. Find it. I really hope it's him. Like, do we have a corn pop Mnuchin meme we could make?
Growth, and we're running above those numbers, that we'll have in excess of the $1.5 trillion that was the static cut. Now, let me just say, aside from tax cuts, we also did have increased government spending. And the reason for that was the president felt it was important to rebuild the military. It had been underinvested. And to get that done, we had to agree with the Democrats to increase non-military spending. So if you look at the increase in the deficit, a significant component of that is additional government spending. We did a bipartisan deal this year, but there's no question we need to slow down the rate of growth of government spending because we can't sustain these deficits growing at these levels.
But can I just put a fine point on that?
I stopped listening. Are you listening to this? Because all I can hear is wah, 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 blah, 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 blah.
Yes, and it's all con. They're calling it middle class tax cuts, but it is of course nothing of the kind.
Talk about
It is going to empower corporations and billionaires. They already had a windfall. They're going to have a bigger windfall, and then at some point, when it looks like our budget is unbelievably out of control, they're going to start taking more food stamps away from people, which they've already started, and they're going to start putting onerous restrictions on disabled people, which they've already started. So this stuff is like low-hanging fruit for any progressive because they're totally doing it, and they're totally doing it in the open. And I'm trying to share that picture of Mnuchin with the money and his wife.
We've got it. James has it up.
Because I'm not that good at Twitch yet. So
James is already sharing it on our stream. Oh, I'm pointing in all the different directions, but James already has it up on our Twitch, like a superimposed over our faces. Gross. Look, this is the wife I bought with all of this money.
Yeah.
And she's like, this is the face I bought with all of this money. Oh my God. No one looks like they're kissing all the time. Like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's been some work there, but it's funny because they're so obviously Bond villains who don't understand that they're Bond villains.
Oh my God. I'm reading the chat. Yes. Limex Theo, you can't compromise on basic human rights and needs. Exactly. Thank you very much. I'm glad you have this handled there in the chat, so I don't actually have to say anything. Ignore the idea of budget and deficit, fight back, the tax cut and military budget, etc. None of this argument is valid. Yes, the chat is quite passionate tonight, and I love it, and I'm thrilled. Friday is a great day. Maybe I should pick up Fridays, right? Is this how it is on Fridays? We're all passionate and excited.
People are punchy. I wish I remembered snacks though.
I know. You can run and get something. Go get something. It's fine. We do it all the time. Mood though. Moderately uninformed. Yeah, sourcing support. I'm glad you busted out of your hiding to come out and talk in our chat. And can you please school some folk? The top 10% owns 80% of the wealth. Here's a question I have about the taxes. Well, Kelly's got the question I have about the taxes is the following. Are they going to be this year? He said he's coming out with them in 90 days. It can't be, probably because everyone's going to be talking about taxes soon in 90 days.
I don't think they will. Well,
they can't,
first of all,
right? They have to do it for next year.
Tax year's ended.
Yeah.
I mean, 2019's ended. So I think that the IRS heads would explode if they had to retroactively. They're not going to be retroactive.
But
So
also, if he gets out, so this is kind of like a bomb that's going to explode in the face of whoever gets, elected next year. Let's picture, because it's important to picture the future that you want, that Bernie Sanders is being sworn in on January 20th or 21st of next year, whatever the date may be, somewhere around that time. And Trump does this horrible tax scheme that's not going to take effect until next year. It's going to undermine, continue to undermine whoever the president is and the economy next year. So they want to do all they can in case a Democrat gets in to say, look, the minute a Democrat gets in, the whole economy tanks. Wall Street is scared. And it's really because it takes several years for the economic policies. I mean, we're still riding anything positive that's happening. We're really riding the coattails of Obama's policies. It takes at least 4 years of economic policies to really start feeling the pinch. And I'm sorry to say that to people because I know people are out there already feeling the pinch of this Trump's administration's presidency. Like when I had to pay my taxes last year and they cost me like, the size of a small airline. Well, Trump keeps talking about the middle class tax cuts. It just never happens.
No,
Go ahead, Kelly.
Well, they're going to try that. Once he's out of power, they're going to use that. First of all, Obama inherited a very, the financial crisis, and he saved capitalism. He, got the banks back and up and running, and we all have our opinions on that, negative ones. But I will say what is interesting this round of elections, rather than
Wait,
back
Lauren,
then.
hold on a second. I'm sorry to pause, but Lauren, Flowery Jane, I think, was kidding. I'm sorry, Flowery Jane, if you got timed out, but I'm pretty sure Flowery Jane was kidding. She's been a person of I haven't read the whole thing, but I do feel kind of bad about that.
Oh, Lauren took care of it.
Okay.
But I think that there's so much enthusiasm for taxing rich people that it'll be less of an issue.
Say that
Should
again.
a
I'm
Bernie
sorry.
or a Warren become the president. I mean, I think that the economy is going to be terrifying for a number of reasons, but I think that there's a definite appetite to tax rich people that there wasn't, 4, 6, 8 years ago.
Oh, I hope to God so. I mean, they have 80% apparently of all the wealth that was made over the last year.
They have all the things.